All right, Chris Peaks here tonight with Chris Pahakis for our college football podcast. Sorry we were not here last week to go over the games. Had some things come up, but we're back here to cover 2 weeks in one. Let's jump right into this and get the 800-pound gorilla out of the room.
Oh yeah,
Deion Sanders. I mean, he's for real, right?
who's that?
Deion. I mean,
Oh, well, I think I believe they have Oregon next week. I
mhm.
think that'll be the real test. I don't think they've had a real test yet.
But regardless, if they lose to Oregon and Southern Cal, and they lose 2 of the games, they finish 8-4. That is still a phenomenal
Oh yeah,
turnaround.
absolutely. Well, he's already doubled the wins from last year.
Right, and they're the quarterback play from his son, and then who may be the greatest cornerback.
Yeah.
Travis Hunter
Well,
kid.
he definitely has been more impressive than I think most people were willing to give him credit for. But man, I tell you what, he was in one of his press conferences, he was talking about his interaction with his son, and he said that his son referred to him as dad, and I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't Little League. This isn't
Right.
him coaching 8-year-olds. If you're gonna coach your son, you've got to be the same coach for him that you are for the other 98 guys on the team. And I think that'll end up. Right now I'm sitting here looking. TCU is 26-13 against Houston.
Well, there's no doubt TCU is not the team that they. I mean, TCU, not even the team they were last year.
You can't give him the credit of beating the team that was in the national championship game last year because it's not the same team.
I agree with that, but at the same time, you've got a 111 team. You've got these naysayers out there, and you go on the road and you be the top 17 team.
Yeah.
I mean, that was.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that he deserves credit, but I mean,
and he did defeat a Nebraska team.
I want to see what he does against Oregon.
And and I don't know if they're to the level to beat Oregon or USC yet. Because let's think about this. When you go in the transfer portal, there's a reason you go. You weren't playing at the school you was at.
Yeah.
But with that being said, he got a lot of players that were not playing at some big schools that are coming to Colorado playing a lot of inferior talent. I think you got to play from Auburn. You're not playing Georgia anymore. In Alabama, you're playing Nebraska and those types of teams. So we'll see.
Yeah.
As long as he keeps that, as long as Shador keeps up with that kind of quarterback player, and they have a lot of weapons on offense, so it should be fun. Let's talk about what team are you most impressed with in the first few weeks?
Florida State.
I agree with you.
They had a really rough day today, but
I think they're the best team in the nation.
Yeah, man, I don't panic over close calls with bad teams. I mean, all good teams have them. All good teams want to take a week off. All good teams start looking to the following week. Florida State's playing Clemson next week. They're thinking about it.
Of course.
And so for them to have a close call against Boston College, that doesn't really change my opinion.
And when you're playing those teams like that, you're getting their best shot every time you play a team that you're better than. So yeah, I agree with you on that. The team that you're most disappointed with. I think we'll both agree on that.
We'll both agree on that. I mean, Alabama has not had the statement that they hyped this season to be. All off season, that's all we heard was, we're this, we're that, and we haven't seen that on the field yet. That being said, I have an unpopular opinion that I'm actually loving the current Alabama defense.
Well, I was fixing to say something about that. To me, they have lived up to what
they have. Because there's a lot of people who want to say, "Oh, they gave up, 21 points in the fourth quarter against Texas," and I'm like, "Yeah, but one of them was on a turnover that was literally the first play from scrimmage on the offensive possession." And the defense had just come off the field and they got the ball at the 5-yard line. Okay, that's one of them. But the other 14 points, you know what? They kept them in the game for 3 quarters. It was the first game this year that they had to play 4 quarters. So they weren't conditioned for it, nor should a team ever. Right. I mean, if you're getting outflanked on possession that bad, you're eventually going to get gassed. And we've seen that time and time again over the years with a strong Alabama defense and a mediocre offense that eventually they do just get worn out. And
when you're playing, 55 plays, 60 plays is, on the field, you're going to get gassed. And like I said, they kept them in the game. You got a quarterback throwing 2 interceptions.
They kept them in the game last week. They kept them in the game this week. And
they got there for defense. This week they would have got beat.
This is I think this week's game, the more and more I think about it, I think this was I think what Saban says in his press conference is absolutely right. This game was used to develop a quarterback, but I believe the quarterback he's trying to develop is the only one we didn't see today. I think this was about punishment for Milroe.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that was the right move.
I think he knew he could get by on this game without him. And I bet you that come next Friday, when it's time to announce the starter for next game, it'll be Milroe.
Yeah, I didn't like that move.
This game was about, and I don't think it was so much about punishing him. I think it's about shaping him into the leader he wants him to be. And,
get his attention.
I don't know if it was so much about the 2 interceptions last week or, a lot of the missed targets last week. But, I mean, because you got to admit, those 2 interceptions were pretty bad. I mean, that was some serious Tony Romo shit where you just throw into 3 guys of the opposing team and there's not even one of your guys anywhere near it.
I will say this: he was lucky that he didn't have 5 or 6 interceptions because he threw into. He threw
into traffic, but at the end of the day, I don't care who you got at quarterback. I don't care if it's Bryce Young. I don't care if it's Tua Tagovailoa. I don't care if it's Jalen Milroe. If you can't block and guys are in their grill in half a second, there's nobody that's going to be able to throw the ball.
That is the biggest disappointment to me is this huge line they touted, 6'9", 6'7", 3 guys over 350 pounds, and they cannot block. They cannot get a push. I think they ran the ball okay.
They ran the ball well in the fourth quarter, but I think at that point, at that point, you had the same situation that we were in the week before against Texas. You had a defense that was gassed.
I think even against Texas, at times they ran the ball well, but when they could not having kind of passing attack, and they start walking those safeties and those corners up to the line,
Mhm.
and suddenly you've got 8, 9, 10 people in the box. You're not going to be able to run the ball.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh, they
you know,
were daring them to throw the football. I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely.
they were like, if you can throw the football, you'll beat us. That's exactly what they were doing, and I mean, they were obviously right.
And I think, to give the Devils due, I think Shark called a tremendous game.
Oh, it was outstanding. It was one of the most outstanding coaching performances I've ever seen.
Oh, absolutely. He came. I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
it was it was great. You so yeah, they've but I still have all the confidence in Saban that he'll get things worked out. I'm tired of the naysayers. Now it's time for him to retire.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading these articles. They're talking about the disappointing season from last year. I'm like, they went 11-2 and lost 2 plays on the last game of the season. At most schools, they would be having parades and banners
Yeah.
hung up.
And won the Sugar Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Well, I mean, and let's not forget that the year before that, 12-1, forgive me, 13-1, and in the national championship.
yeah, and
Yeah.
And they point out this stuff too, like Saban's first double-digit loss as a coach. First one right. Well, when you're at a school 17 years, eventually something like that's
It
going to
was
happen.
double digits by 1 digit.
But when you have that kind of longevity, yeah, eventually something like that is going to happen.
Yeah.
Talking
Well,
about 3 of his
I
assistants have
I
been doing that.
wasn't really panicking over the Texas loss because I knew
No,
the
I wasn't
Texas
really.
loss was coming as soon as the last second ticked off the clock in the Texas game last year. I'm like, man, if Quinn Ewers had not been injured, they would have won last year.
Well, what I was impressed with Texas is they whipped Alabama up front.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Yeah,
won.
they won the line on both sides of the ball.
Let's jump around a little SEC. What do you think about Georgia? Are they for real or?
I don't know. I mean, they seem to have struggled with South Carolina. Who they got next? Do we know?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't surprised that South Carolina gave them a game.
I think. I mean, it's obviously now that Florida beat Tennessee. It's going to come down to Florida or Georgia in the East.
A couple of weeks ago, I never would have thought Florida would have done that. I just
Yeah.
you gotta give Napier credit for keeping that team together after that loss to
Now you
Utah.
remember, I think it was one of our first shows when we were doing the SEC preview. I said you never know with Florida.
Well, but you also
You
said
never really know.
about Tennessee. You said that you thought that may have just been a flash in the pan last year.
Yeah, I thought Tennessee was a flash in the pan, but also Florida is like the biggest wild card. You never know when they're going to go, 3-8, and you never know when they're going to, win the SEC East. I mean it's
one
crazy.
thing that I noticed today too, and he must put together 2, good recruiting classes. Is what LSU did to Mississippi State. I was impressed with how LSU looked.
Yeah, they look much better than they've looked lately.
Because I know the talent, I know the cupboard was not bare at Mississippi
Okay,
State.
all right. So I'm gonna take a shot at some folks that you and I both know. All right, so next week is when we find out if Georgia's for real or not. Because hey, if you think this South Carolina game was a challenge, well, they need to really get ready in Athens. Because next Saturday, UAB's coming to town.
That's a murderer's row for UAB, ain't it? I mean, tell me playing Auburn and going to Auburn and Georgia.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
trying to
heck is
prove, they're
that,
trying to
man?
act
I
like
mean,
there's somebody. I mean, Georgia's in Auburn the following week.
for UAB,
Kentucky at home after that. Vanderbilt. I
Georgia's
think
got
all
Kentucky
eyes
at
are
home.
on I think all eyes are on October 28th. That's
Um,
in Gainesville.
Let's say, can after UAB, Kentucky, Georgia plays Kentucky,
Now they play Auburn
and
in
then
Auburn.
Kentucky.
Then Kentucky in Athens.
That's a tough little stretch right there.
That is a tough stretch. Then they're in Vanderbilt and in the Swamp.
I mean, that's Vanderbilt's. That's. I mean, but in the SEC, when you look at these
Man,
schedules,
Georgia's got all their conference games are on the road this year. All the ones that matter. They're on the road against Auburn. They're on the road against Vandy. They're on the road against Florida. They're on the road against Tennessee.
but they got Kentucky at home though.
They got Kentucky at home.
See, and I think Kentucky's been more of a tougher game for them what Tennessee's been over the last few years.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen this year, though.
No,
I think it's also. I think when the rankings come out on Tuesday, I think Florida's going to be probably in the top 15, and because they're unranked right now, and I mean they're going to at least crack the top 20.
What do you think about Auburn's team right now? It's hard for me to really,
it is hard. I guess we'll really find out in a couple weeks when they go into Georgia. But
yeah, I mean they could have lost that Cal game.
I thought the Cal game they looked terrible. I thought Cal could have won that game if they weren't Cal, but unfortunately, that's exactly who they are.
I mean, to me right now, from what I've seen, the best team in the SEC is LSU. Or they're playing the best right now.
I think they played the best today.
Let me ask you about Ole Miss. What do you think about them so far?
I can't say for sure, but one thing I want to point out here: Auburn has Texas A&M in College Station next week.
Yeah. What about A&M? That's a hard loss for Jimbo.
Yeah. I think A&M for the last maybe 3 years has served as a really good metric on how you play against them really defines your identity as a team. Because they can give you a good game. They manage to lose most of them, though.
Do you remember that game against Auburn 3 or 4 years ago when they led Auburn the whole game, had more yards, and ended up having like 3 turnovers? And I mean, I think it was in 2020. And I mean, they just snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. I don't know if you remember that game, but that's case in point, like what you was talking about. Let me ask you this: that loss to Miami, that was not a good one. Is there a certain number that Jimbo's got to go 9-3 and beat Alabama? He's got to go 8-4 and beat Alabama. I mean, is there a number that he has to, get to save his job, or is his job even in jeopardy? Because they would owe him like $80 million.
I think that. I think as long as he doesn't totally tank and take more than 4 losses, I think they stick with him for at least another season.
I agree with you.
I think it's also going to depend on where they go from there. I mean, if they move on from Jimbo, who do they go to?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Also, I think barring a total derailment, like they had last year, that
mhm,
they keep him because you think about this right here, and it's probably more than 80 million. By the time they bought him out, his
mhm,
assistants bought out another coach, their
mhm.
assistants, then hired that coach, and that would be a $300 million fire. And I know Texas A&M has some money, but they can't afford to. I mean,
Yeah, they don't want to. They're not as much money as they do have. They don't want to waste it.
right. And
Um,
what that's I want to say. You just pointed on was a great point. You think about over your lifetime, and I'll even go back before you was born. The coaches that I remember going to Texas A&M. I remember when Jackie Sherrill went there. He signed a then record. Okay, he signed a record 5-year, $5.1 million contract. That was the record. I mean, that was the coaching contract record. He's doing like $1 million a year. Sherrill, you had R.C. Slocum, you had Franchione go there, Mike
mhm.
Sherman from the Packers, Sullivan.
Bryant came from there.
Yeah, and then you go get Jimbo Fisher, a national championship winning coach. If he can't win there, who do you got? I mean, who do you go get there next? I mean, I've always said the Texas A&M job is a fool's errand. They've got the facilities, they got the
It
fan
is.
base, they got the
Yeah.
recruiting base, they got all the tools in place to be a major power, and they fall flat every time. They can't.
Yeah, they never have. I mean, you look at the Manziel years, when they had one victory over Alabama and then one close call with them.
They couldn't even get this championship with Manziel.
Uh-uh.
And
They lost other games that they should have easily won.
and to think about it, they've been in the SEC West or then the SEC now for 10, 11, 12 years, and they've not even been to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And they've only won in their history one national championship. Now, it's possible they would have had a second one because when Bryant was there, it was his last season, and they were undefeated and ranked like number 2 in the nation. And word leaked out that he had accepted the Alabama job, and they dropped their next 2 games. But it just I just don't see it. Arkansas, what do you think about them? Too early to tell.
Colorado just got to pick 6. First score of the game.
Arkansas is getting beat by BYU.
Well, I guess that answers what I think of Arkansas.
I'm surprised that because I thought that he was really building a physical, hard-nosed team. Kind of like what Saban and Kirby had built. I mean, they were big and strong, and to go out there and let BYU do that to you.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where at this point in the season, I don't know who's good and who's not.
I agree with you. I don't know.
Does Arkansas lose to BYU because BYU is really good or because Arkansas sucks? I don't know. I really don't have an answer to that. And
what a lot of people don't realize about Arkansas is, and I can understand their fan base getting frustrated. That is a program with a very proud football tradition. They got a national championship. They had a lot of Southwestern Conference championships. They've been to Atlanta 3 times. They've never won the SEC. They've had success in the SEC. I can understand the Arkansas fan base wanting to compete.
Yeah. Yeah,
what
it
used to
was
be done?
almost like every 5 to 7 years they squeaked out a good team for a while there. But it's been a while. Pretty much
That's
ever
what,
since Bielema showed up, he kind of ran him into the ground, I feel.
you know,
Um, but I mean, truthfully, man, there are 2 games this year. Their last win was over Kent State. And then I don't even know what this other team is by their initials. WCU. Who is that?
Western Carolina. You
Okay.
know, I want to ask you something.
Um.
When you just talking about Bielema,
Uh.
when he left Wisconsin after winning 3 straight Big Ten championships and went to Arkansas, do you not see that as a step down or as a parallel move at best? I
I.
mean,
I
you're
see
in
it. Well.
you're in a
I,
conference where you can win a national championship. You're winning conference championships, and you're going to go to one of the worst teams in
but
the SEC
but
West.
they also never did anything beyond the Big Ten championships, and I
Well,
think
he had a
that he
couple of 12
wanted to make an impact at that.
yeah, I mean,
I think at that, but you got to remember what was going on at that time. At that time, SEC was such a powerhouse,
yeah,
and
I
I
get that,
think he
but
wanted to prove that he could build a team in Arkansas in an SEC school, and but Big Ten football doesn't always translate to SEC football.
no,
You know, it's
no,
just a different type of football.
I understand what you're talking about with the power though too, but you got to pick and choose where you're going. Yeah, you may go take the Auburn job
Hmm.
because that's a great job in my opinion. You might go take LSU, but you want to go to Mississippi State. I mean, you want to go to Arkansas, or it's it's like a 3-hour bus ride just to get to the stadium. I mean, as opposed to, I think he made a bad move leaving Wisconsin. I mean, I just think he made a horrible. I think it was the worst decision he ever made. Kind of like I think the worst decision Rich Rod made was when he left his alma mater to go to Michigan, and probably I know you wouldn't even think he was born, but Curry left his alma mater to come to Alabama.
Yeah.
Why would you leave your alma mater? I mean,
Well, that was Kentucky, right?
no, he was at Georgia Tech, and
Georgia Tech.
and
Well, I
he had
mean,
been
because I mean, when's the
he was a
last? I
star at
mean, he
Georgia
wanted to be a
Tech.
part of a contender. Is
Well, 3 years after he left, they won the national championship.
yeah.
Yeah, in 1990. 3 years after he left Kentucky, Georgia Tech, they won a national championship. 3 years after he left Alabama, they won a national championship.
Well, apparently he is. Apparently he's a real good luck charm. Maybe he should swing by and coach a year at Alabama now.
Well, do you remember that he started a program, and Alabama actually played him, Georgia State.
I do remember that. I remember when we played Georgia State. It was about 8 or 9 years ago.
As far as the Big Ten right now, I really don't know what to think about them.
I think about as little as I've thought of them just about every year.
I mean, I've tried to, want to see what's going on with it. It's just, I'm like, I'm not a big Big Ten fan. I think what you got,
So Deion
and Penn
Sanders has
State.
2 sons on his team, right?
I
One
think
of
so.
them plays his old position and wears his old number.
Does he?
And then the other one plays quarterback. So which one do you think is his favored son?
This Travis Hunter, Heisman candidate. I mean, I think right now, Sanders' son and him both are Heisman candidates. And of course, there's a lot of football left to be played.
Yeah, there's a lot to be left. I really don't even want to start thinking about Heisman until after the 6th or 7th game, but
Right.
you know, at
impressed were you
least
with
get
Travis
2 or
Hunter, though?
3 games of conference play in, and but
How impressed are you with Travis Hunter? I mean, this kid's playing 140 snaps a game.
I mean, that's very impressive, but you assume that the Heisman's given away to the best player each year when it's actually not. It's given away to pretty much the best quarterback
Yeah.
every year. And I mean, I think you're right. I think he should be in the talks, but you know, it's been obvious that the Heisman goes to the style point getter more so than the best player every year for quite some time. I mean, why hadn't a defensive player won it? You know what? Since Charles Woodson, you know, I mean,
you know, and that Travis Hunter, is obviously in phenomenal shape. But
Yeah.
you remember back, reading football 89 years ago when they had platoon football? These guys were playing, the whole game through positions.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Have you ever read about, the history of college football? I mean, 70, 80 years ago, you had platoon football where guys were playing every snap.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when you change possession, you didn't even change personnel, you just flipped it.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it is.
Man, have you got this Colorado game on? Because this is
Yeah.
looking at kind of interesting.
Yep, I've got it on. What do you think about some of Deion's comments after these games?
I think he's just being Deion. I mean,
he made it. Did he make a comment about y'all said a black man couldn't?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, shut up with that. I mean,
yeah, I don't want to hear that. I don't think anybody does, but also at the same time, I mean, that's what he did his whole playing career. You know, he basically cut a professional wrestling promo every time he got in front of a camera. And, that probably had about as much to do with his success as his play on the field. And it's the same thing he's doing now as a coach.
I mean, nobody doubted his race in any bit of that, whether he would succeed or not.
Nobody even thought about it.
They questioned how he was doing it, running off every player from that team and bringing everybody in the transfer portal. His race had nothing to do with that.
It had zero to do with it, but you know that they're going to play that card when they can. So,
And, he said some other stuff that, I'm just going to call a spade a spade. If a white coach had said something like this, he'd been fired. He made the statement. He said he wanted his quarterback to be raised by mama and daddy, but his defensive line to be playing for mama.
I don't even know what the hell that means.
Well, I think what he was saying was he wanted a white quarterback, but a player from the projects on his defensive line.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you what, though, if they really want to prove that they are somebody, they're going to have to do more than 5 yards against Colorado State in the first quarter.
Yeah, I agree.
Man, Texas ain't exactly blowing away Wyoming either, buddy. They're up 17-10. See, I mean, after these big games, every team has a hangover. I mean,
Yeah,
You mean to
I
tell
s-
me Texas shouldn't be blowing out Wyoming?
absolutely. I mean, you should. And I should have known they was going to have a hangover after beating Alabama. Yeah. What what else?
What else?
Yeah, what else is going on right now?
Oh my goodness.
Um. So, wow, who so far right now? I mean, of course, Primes did great, but coaching jobs right now. Mario Cristobal at Miami.
Yeah, Miami has been impressive, but it wasn't that long ago that Miami went. That's a fumble, man. I think Colorado is going to be up 14-7.
Um, are they turning the corner, or was that just a
Yeah, there
just
was there was a season, I guess it was about 3 or 4 years ago, that Miami went like 9-0, 10-0.
Rick was
But
there. They won their first 10 games and then lost their
yeah,
last
and
4.
and then of course, as soon as they started to play in the better teams, they got killed.
Well, what happened? Well, really, it wasn't even better teams. When they started off 10-0, they lost to Pittsburgh at home, and that was not a good Pittsburgh team.
Mhm.
And they lost the bowl game. And then if you remember, the next season they came in ranked number 8 in the nation and started off against LSU, and LSU just drubbed them.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I don't think they were quite there, and I watched a good bit of that Texas A&M game, and A&M had a pretty comfortable lead, and then Miami just came back, and A&M looked pretty bad.
Um, there's gonna I mean, like I said, there's so much football left to be played in all these conferences.
And
I
Colorado
don't.
doesn't even have 20 yards of offense right now.
Yeah, I will say this right here about the SEC,
Mhm.
and I probably can't about the other league. There is no team in the SEC right now that is just head and shoulders above everybody else, like we've seen in the past.
No. LSU had a good performance today, but that was after 2 pretty lackluster performances. So, let's see what they do, moving forward here as they get into conference play.
On any given day, to me, any team could beat another one. I mean, besides like a Vanderbilt or something. But I don't.
Yeah.
I think on any given Saturday, it would not surprise me to see, somebody get beat. And that's surprising, because we've seen so many teams that was, for years, just a clear cut above them. I'm not so sure from what I've seen right now that there's really a team in the nation that is just head and shoulders, above the first top 15.
Yeah, I haven't seen enough from Ohio State and Michigan. Obviously we talked about Florida State. I thought Texas looked really good. Of course, they don't look good today, but yeah, I'm not gonna hold that against them. They're gonna win. They may win ugly, but
And that's what happened. I mean, like you said, you should. Yeah, they should expect them to
I
have
mean,
a
because look,
on after going on the
Texas
road
is
and
going
take
to
the
win the
win.
Big 12, and they're going to win it
Oh yeah,
hands down because the Big 12 is fading into obscurity, and I don't really think Oklahoma is really going to give them much resistance.
no,
So I don't see anyone else in the Big 12 that really could potentially um, give them a hard time. So they're going to go undefeated, and they're going to be in the playoff.
yeah.
I
I don't see anybody
I-
sneaking up on them. I mean, I don't.
yeah, they're I think they're a shoe in for the playoffs right now. Of course, every time you say that about a team and it looks like their schedule is kind of weak and no one's going to challenge them, then they do something stupid like lose to Baylor. I mean,
Yeah, it's
it's
amazing that Bob Stoops was there. 20 years or so, and he only got one national championship because they would lose to a 4-4 Texas Tech team.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of those Stoops Oklahoma teams were really good.
Yeah, and they every year, like you said about Baylor, it never fails. They would have a loss to a subpar team,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just so surprising because the talent level is so disparaging. Talk about kind of subject of talent levels. Back in the '70s, they almost dropped Florida State's football program, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they played Alabama. I don't know if it was Tuscaloosa or Bryant Denny, but they was on like a 30-something game losing streak, and they led Alabama 7-3 with like a minute and some change to go, and they had the ball. Bama had them pinned. Florida State had the ball like their own 3-yard line. Well, instead of punting, Florida State took a safety and made it 7-5, and then did the free kick. And Alabama went down and kicked the field goal, beat them 8-7.
Hey, let me cut in something real quick here. I was just looking over Texas remaining schedule. They have 2 games left against teams that are currently ranked. And one of those teams is Kansas State, who will probably not be ranked on Tuesday. So they have 1 game left against a ranked team, and that's Oklahoma. They should win out pretty easily and win the Big 12 and be in the 14 playoff. If Alabama doesn't get it together and get into the playoff, which is a long shot right now, I mean, I think it would be cool to see some fresh meat in there, and Texas would be a team that hadn't been in there before.
Yeah, it would be good for college football to see Texas, in there.
I mean, I think it'll be you're going to have the same boring 3 teams. I think you're going to end up with Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State. Michigan and Ohio State are just always going to be there. I've accepted that. I think Georgia, even though they're probably not going to be anywhere near as dominant as they were last year, I think they do have a pretty good chance to go undefeated and win the SEC championship, or maybe drop one out and win the SEC championship and still get in. I mean, I think that's ultimately. Well, we also have Florida State. If Florida State stays strong, they're going to off the loser of Michigan and Ohio State. So I think you got whoever ends up being the Big Ten champion, Florida State winning the ACC, Georgia winning the SEC again, and Texas.
Yeah.
That's what I would see the 14 playoff being at right now, unless something crazy happens. If
You can see Colorado State
I
secondary.
mean,
They are trying to deliver big hits.
I don't see it in Texas's schedule though. I mean, TCU's having an off year. Iowa State, Texas Tech. I mean, when's the last time they were there? Texas is pulling away from Wyoming now. It's 31-10. They got Baylor next, Kansas, not even Kansas State, Kansas. And Houston, BYU, K-State, TCU, Iowa State, Texas Tech. They're going to win that. They're going to win out. I think the only team that might have the potential for an upset would be Oklahoma, but I don't really even see that. But speaking of Kansas State, did you happen to catch their game today against Missouri?
No.
Oh my goodness. And that was probably one of the most poorly coached games I've ever seen. At the very end, the Missouri is going to go for a 56-yard field goal for the win. Final seconds. So the game clock has stopped because the quarterback clocked the football. Well, I guess somebody forgot to tell the field goal unit that the play clock does not stop in that situation. They're huddled up on the sideline, pep talking each other. Meanwhile, the coach runs out and is kind of like, "What the heck are y'all doing? Get on the field and kick the damn ball." And they get a delay of game. And so they back it up 5. So they then run a play, I guess, in an effort to try to get a few yards. They run a play. Gets batted down. So I guess they figured, what the heck, we'll just try the 61-yard field goal. And bro, that man made that field goal. 61 yards for the win.
Wow.
It's so much excitement, so much fan love.
Wow.
Love the energy in the building.
Did you know that that win over Nebraska, they made $18 million that week?
Oh, really?
Yeah, a record.
I feel like you get them ready and make it.
Man, this game is about to be fun. There's a fumble on the kick return, and there's a fight breaking out. Let's see who got the ball.
It has continued all.
I think Colorado held on to it, actually. Or Colorado State, rather.
Great to see you here. Thank you. Now make sure y'all go get my
I kind of would love it if Dion and this other coach just get into it at the end of the game and the walkthrough. And the walk up and the Dion told the guys on game day, he said, "Y'all keep the cameras rolling when the game is over."
I want to get in on this. No, I've known a couple who like to mix it up a little bit.
So let's go over some of next week's games. What do we have on the slate? Alabama's got Ole Miss, right?
Alabama's got Ole Miss.
What do you think? Go either way?
Ole Miss is one of those that they hadn't really defined who they are this year. You know,
I mean,
Kiffin's always trying to get in Saban's ear, and I think he wants to beat Saban real bad. I think
I know he does.
once if he ever is gonna do it, this might be the year that he could do it.
I think his best chance was his first year. You remember that game?
Let me ask you this though. If you get the same offense that put 24 points on Texas,
Yeah.
does Alabama win against Ole Miss?
I
I
don't know.
I think if they can put 24 on Texas, they got to at least put 31 on Ole Miss.
Well, I mean, they only put 17 today on South Florida.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying is I'm talking about the same offense that put 24 on Texas.
You know, the thing that with Alabama, they don't have an identity. You know, their identity is trying to run the ball and throwing the deep ball. And Milroe, they don't have an offensive identity.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
And they've changed their identity now a couple times, in the years, but it was a smooth transition.
Mm-hmm. I just don't know how we end up with no one to play quarterback.
Well, that was one thing I could understand. Either we go to have, first round draft picks at quarterback, the greatest in school history, and nobody that can't even, play.
Mm-hmm.
Henderson, the left tackle, prematurely.
You look back, a lot of people are comparing this year to 2015. 2015 started off kind of rocky. They caught a loss at Ole Miss, which was an ugly game, 4 turnovers. Coker threw an interception at the very end of the game. Ole Miss led by 20 twice. And we lost by 8. So,
that night. I got the point. I could not.
Well, I didn't have that luxury because I was actually in attendance.
I went to sleep when I went down, and my friend woke me up. I think it was 30-10. I just turned it over and went to sleep, and my friend wakes me up when Alabama cuts it to 30-24, and then I went back to sleep, and he woke me up again and said, Alabama's not going away.
Yeah, they went down by 20 twice and came back both times to make it at least close. But
that was one thing I seen with a testament to against Texas. And this thing with Saban State, they're not going to go away. They're not going to quit. What other games are up next week?
We got we got Florida State and Clemson.
Moving the wrong way.
How do you think that's going to go?
I think. Well, it's at Clemson. Clemson's off to a pretty rocky start, but
losing to dude, that was that was bad.
Then we got Colorado, Oregon.
Under duress.
Arkansas and LSU.
Defensively, by Colorado front.
Ohio State and Notre Dame. I mean, I think Ohio State probably takes that hands down.
Meeting with him earlier this week.
So,
His kids
SEC, I guess,
he has a
yeah,
lot.
any other big games there?
State team, but it's really important for him. He said he was to be part of the
Auburn, A&M,
rivalry where they had two
Arkansas, and LSU.
Look, that is historic. That is something.
That's really it.
Notice what he made his comments concerning Deion wearing a hat, wearing sunglasses, all the more puzzling.
So Ole Miss, Alabama, Auburn, A&M,
Importance of that.
and Arkansas, LSU.
Then when you said that, you make that comment.
It'll be a big weekend.
Speculation, criticism, and it really just motivated Coach Prime to the degree where you can tell it bothered him. So now it's about playing the game.
Is this a separation Saturday?
I think there was.
Say again.
Is this a separation Saturday?
A separation Saturday?
Yeah, where you start separating, the cream for the crop.
I think we are gonna start to see some. Like, we're gonna find out just how for real Florida State is when they play Clemson. Even though Clemson's having an off year, they are still Clemson. So we'll know exactly if Florida State's for real then. I think, Arkansas, LSU, this is a game to really tell us a lot about who those teams are. It's probably the same can be said for Auburn with A&M, and then also for Alabama and Ole Miss about both of those teams.
One of the things we're seeing though is Colorado State, they're making tackles in the open field. Not a whole lot of yardage after the catch.
I will say this: I think if Lane does get a victory over Saban, I don't think he'll be so stupid as Freeze to not have his have the team ready to finish the season.
6-yard gain on Freeze.
I agree with you. One thing about this, I don't know if Ole Miss has the depth yet. You think about last year, they started off 6-0, 6-1, and finished 8-5. One thing about Lane though, he loves Saban.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of respect for him, but I mean, when you have respect for a coach, I mean, I think Sark was the same way. I don't think it was a bitter thing that Sark wanted to beat Saban, but I think he really wanted to win.
Of course, it's competitive nature.
Yeah, and I think Lane's the same way. I don't think Lane thinks he can, though.
And,
I don't think Lane ever.
I think it's in the. A lot of coaches had that stigma until he finally lost to Jimbo that they couldn't beat him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and, they've made a big deal out of that. Well, he's lost to 3 assistants now. Well, I mean, eventually when you play him that many times. So I think we've wrapped that one up. I'm going to stop recording. Is there anything else you want to add to this week?
No. I would say the message to Alabama fans is calm down.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world. And you know what? Even if they do lose a couple more games this season, dude, go out on a date. Live your life.
Yeah, that's one thing about Alabama fans.
Yeah, I mean,
I have to admit that I've been guilty of it before. That when Alabama lost that game to Auburn on that kick six, it was like a death. I mean,
that was a gut punch. Yeah,
I've had to put it all in perspective. That this is just a game. The sun's going to come up tomorrow.
You know what? I didn't go to church that next day because my pastor was an Auburn fan. Back in 2013. I'll admit that I was like, no, I'm not going. The heck with him. But yeah, man, I mean, it's like, hey, this is fun. It's football. It's fun to get into. It's fun to watch. But dude, don't let your life revolve around it. Come on. Like, it's a game. And you
Yeah.
know, if Alabama does, if it's this year, or if it's 10 years from now, if they ever do finally collapse and the dynasty and the dominance be over, when then you know what? Hey, we've got 6 championships in the last 12 years.
Well, yeah,
There's no other
eventually,
team that's done that ever.
yeah, eventually it will end. You know, all of them.
Yeah, it'll.
Think about this, but think about
It's
this.
like,
Think about how
I
long
mean,
this
what
dynasty
else
has
do you
lasted.
want? Is my
But
question.
think
What
about
the hell else do you want? Really?
think about how long this one has lasted when you look at other dynasties like Southern Cal that went 3 or 4 years. You know, Nebraska in the mid-90s they called dynasties.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, but this has been 17
Yeah.
years,
Those dynasties lasted less than 5 years.
right?
And they usually included 1, maybe 2 championships. Those dynasties were in championship appearances, not wins. So,
Right.
you know, we have been witness and been recipients of probably the greatest college football dynasty in the modern era, at least, if not in history.
Oh, in history. I mean, you look at what,
Appreciate that.
yeah,
And
you look at what Bryant did,
mhm,
and that was the greatest one. Then he went from 61 to 79. Alabama won 6 national championships.
mhm,
But they were also playing 10 games.
mhm,
They weren't playing 14, 15 games. He had unlimited amount of scholarships.
mhm.
Yeah,
And correct me if I'm wrong, but did some of his championships occur in the era where they were just kind of awarded?
yeah, like one of his championships in '64, they got awarded the national championship, and they split it with Arkansas. Well, it was either the AP or the UPI. One of them gave the national championship out before the bowl game, and they gave Alabama the national championship. Alabama lost the bowl game.
Mhm.
Now there was one they kept from him. It was in 1965 or 66. He would have won, I think 66. He would have won 3 in a row. Alabama went undefeated, and Notre Dame and I think Georgia Tech tied, or maybe in Michigan. One of them they tied, and they finished 10-0-1, and both those finished 1 and 2, and Alabama finished 3. But go ahead and stop this one. Too long, and we will be back next week.